The sun was sinking slowly behind the Arizona hills, turning the wide fields into a soft golden color. Hank Rollins wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked toward the barn. He had spent the whole day fixing a broken gate and guiding the cattle back to safer ground. His ranch was quiet most days, just the wind, the animals, and the sound of tools hitting wood. Hank had gotten used to that quiet after many years of living alone. He didn't expect anything unusual to happen that evening. He planned to finish his work, warm up some leftover stew, and sit on his porch until the stars came out. That was his life, simple and steady. But everything changed when he noticed 3 figures standing near the old fence by the entrance of his property. At first, he thought it might be travelers or maybe kids from a nearby town who had taken a wrong turn. But as he walked closer, he realized these were 3 young girls, Apache girls, by the look of their braided hair, their beaded bracelets, and the woven bags resting at their feet. They looked dusty from walking, their clothes faintly coated with the pale desert sand. Hank slowed his steps. He wasn't used to visitors, especially not children, and especially not without warning. The girls stood close together, almost shoulder to shoulder, as if trying to draw courage from one another. They watched him approach with wide, unsure eyes. "Evening," Hank said carefully, trying to sound calm. He didn't want to scare them. "Are you lost?" The eldest girl, who looked about 14, stepped slightly forward. Her face was thin but strong, and her eyes held a mix of fear and determination. She opened her mouth to speak but hesitated, glancing at the other 2 who seemed even younger, maybe 12 and 10. Hank tried again, softening his voice. "Where are your folks? Did you come from the reservation?" The girls didn't answer. Instead, the youngest one clutched her small woven bag to her chest and looked down at her feet. The middle girl kept shifting her weight nervously, as if unsure whether she should stand still or run away. The eldest finally gathered the courage to speak. We walked a long time," she said quietly. Her English was clear, but she spoke as if the words weighed something heavy. "We didn't know where else to go." Hank studied them. They didn't look hurt, just tired, very tired. Their hair looked like it hadn't been brushed in days, and their shoes were dusty and worn. He felt a small tug in his chest, something he wasn't used to feeling anymore. "Well," he said slowly, "this is a ranch. Not much here for visitors. You girls must have someone looking for you." The eldest shook her head gently. "No one is looking." That gave Hank pause. He didn't know what to make of it. Children didn't just wander across the desert alone unless something was very wrong, but he didn't want to assume anything. He was careful with his words. "You hungry?" he asked. All 3 girls lifted their heads at the same time. That was enough of an answer. Hank knew hunger when he saw it. He reached into his pocket for a small granola bar he kept for long work days. He held it out. The middle girl stepped forward slowly, as if expecting him to pull it away. When she took it, she whispered a shy, "Thank you," before stepping back toward the others. They took turns breaking the bar into 3 tiny pieces. The way they ate, quietly, respectfully, not wanting to take too much, told Hank more than words ever could. He let out a slow breath. "Why don't you tell me your names?" The eldest straightened a little, as if remembering her manners. "I'm Tala," she said. "This is Naya and Suni." She pointed to each girl gently. Hank nodded. "I'm Hank." Tala gave a small, polite nod. The other girls peeked up at him shyly, but didn't speak. "Well, Tala," Hank said, "you and your sisters can rest here for a few minutes, but after that, I'll need to help you find your family. I can call someone. Maybe the tribal office or someone local who knows you." At those words, Tala's expression changed. Fear flickered across her face. Quick, but strong. Naya and Suni stepped closer to her, as if they thought someone might separate them. "No," Tala said quickly. "We can't go back. Please, don't send us away." Her voice trembled for the first time, and Hank felt that same strange tug in his chest again. He had seen fear before, but this was different. This was the fear of children who truly believed they had nowhere safe to go. Hank rubbed the back of his neck. He wasn't good at dealing with people's emotions, especially not children's. He lived alone for a reason. The ranch demanded long hours, and after losing his wife years ago, he never tried to build another family or even bring many people around. He liked quiet, predictability, simple routines. Taking care of 3 scared girls was the opposite of all that. "Look," he said gently, "I'm sure there's someone who can help. Maybe an aunt, uncle, someone from your community. You shouldn't be wandering the desert alone." Tala looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together. We didn't wander. We left because we had to. There was no one else." She didn't explain more, and Hank didn't push. He felt it wasn't the time. The air grew quiet. The warm wind brushed across the open field, carrying the faint smell of dry earth. The horses in the distance lifted their heads, watching the scene with mild curiosity. The girls looked so small standing in front of him, even Tala, who was trying her hardest to act older than she was. Hank could tell she felt responsible for the other two. It was in the way she kept checking on them with her eyes, making sure they were close, making sure they weren't too scared. Hank sighed softly, the kind of sigh a man makes when he's trying to figure out the right thing to do. He wasn't heartless. If anything, living alone had made him more aware of how much people sometimes needed others. Still, he didn't want to make promises he couldn't keep. "You said you came a long way," he said gently. "How long have you been walking?" Tala hesitated. Then she whispered, 3 days. Hank's eyebrows rose. 3 days? Across the desert? That wasn't safe for anyone, let alone children. But he held back his concern, not wanting to frighten them further. "No wonder you're tired," he murmured. "You must be worn out." The girls nodded faintly, almost at the same time. Hank looked at the sky. The light was fading quickly. Night in the desert could be cold. Too cold for children without proper shelter. "All right," he said finally, speaking more to himself than to them. "I can't just leave you out here for the night. You can come to the porch and rest for a bit. I'll get you some water." Tala's shoulders lowered with relief. The other 2 girls exchanged small, hopeful glances. They followed Hank slowly, staying close together as they walked toward the house. Hank opened the porch door and motioned for them to sit on the long wooden bench. They sat without a word, their legs barely reaching the edge. He brought out 3 cups of cool water and a small plate with leftover cornbread. They accepted everything politely, whispering soft thank yous. Hank watched them as they ate slowly, almost carefully, as if they weren't used to having enough. As the sun set completely, casting the ranch into gentle shadows, Hank realized something he hadn't expected. He felt a strange sense of responsibility settling in, heavier than the evening air. He didn't know who these girls were. He didn't know why they were alone. And he didn't know what he should do next. But one thing was clear. Their arrival was not an accident. Life had brought them to his ranch door for a reason he didn't yet understand. And as he stood on the porch, watching the 3 Apache girls quietly eating their cornbread, soaked in gratitude and exhaustion, Hank Rollins felt the beginning of a story he never saw coming. The quiet evening settled over the ranch like a soft blanket. The porch light glowed warmly, casting a gentle circle around the 3 girls sitting on the bench. Hank pulled up a wooden chair and sat across from them. He didn't want to hover or scare them, but he also didn't want to leave them alone just yet. Something in their eyes, tired, lost, uncertain, kept him rooted there, even though he still didn't fully understand their situation. Tala kept her back straight, as she held her cup, trying to behave like an adult. She spoke softly to her sisters from time to time, making sure they were fine, asking whether they were still hungry or if they were warm enough. Naya and Suni stayed close to her, leaning against each other like small birds on a branch. "You girls comfortable?" Hank finally asked. Tala nodded. "Yes, thank you." He waited for her to say more, but she didn't. She seemed to be choosing her words carefully, as if she feared saying the wrong thing. Hank cleared his throat. "I want to help you, but I need to know a little more. You said earlier that no one is looking for you, that you had to leave. Can you tell me why?" Tala looked down at her hands, gently rubbing her thumb over the edge of the cup. The wind rustled the nearby bushes, making the silence feel heavier. "We didn't want to be alone," she finally whispered. "You're not alone," Hank said gently. "You've got each other." Tala shook her head. "It's not that kind of alone." Hank didn't push. He knew some stories needed time to come out. He leaned back in his chair, giving her space, letting the moment settle. After a while, Naya spoke softly without looking up. "We didn't know where else to go." Suni nodded. "We walked and walked. We didn't want to go back." Hank frowned gently, not out of anger but worry. "Girls, I'm sure someone cares about you. Didn't you live with family? A guardian? Someone responsible?" Tala hesitated. Her breath trembled a little before she answered. "We lived with a woman. She took care of us. She wasn't family, but she was kind. She looked after other kids too. But she's gone now." Hank let out a slow breath. He didn't ask how or why. The sadness in Tala's voice said more than enough. Losing someone who cared for them must have been incredibly hard. "So when she wasn't there anymore," Hank asked softly, "no one came to help you?" "No," Tala whispered. "People came, but not the kind who wanted to keep us together. They said we might be separated. They said we might have to live in different places." Naya's eyes filled with tears she didn't want to let fall. Suni leaned against her, quietly wiping her cheeks. That explained a lot. Children afraid of being separated would do almost anything to stay together. Even walk across the desert for days. Hank felt his heart tug again, stronger this time. He didn't like seeing anyone scared, especially not children who had already been through so much. "You stuck together," he said softly. "That takes courage." Tala didn't smile, but something in her shoulders relaxed, as if his words gave her a little comfort. Hank stood up then, stretching his back. "You girls must be tired. There's a small guest room inside. It's nothing fancy, but it's warm and has clean blankets." The girls exchanged quick looks, not fearful ones, hopeful ones. "You can stay there for tonight," Hank continued. "But tomorrow, we need to figure things out. Maybe we can talk to someone who can help you safely." At that, Tala shot up from the bench, her eyes filled with panic. "No!" she exclaimed, louder than she meant to. She stepped in front of Naya and Suni as if protecting them. "Please don't send us away. Please, we can help, we can work, we can do anything." Hank lifted his hands gently, trying to calm her. "Now, hold on. We can't live without a man," Tala blurted suddenly. The words surprised Hank. He'd never heard someone say that with such desperation. He blinked, unsure what she meant. Tala's face flushed with emotion. We were told that if we don't have a man to watch over us, we won't be safe, that we won't be able to stay together. They told us girls can't manage alone, that someone has to speak for us, or people won't let us stay anywhere." Hank felt a knot form in his chest. He couldn't imagine anyone making these children believe something like that. They were young, but they weren't helpless. And the idea that they thought they needed a man to be valued or protected settled heavily on him. "Suni is small," Tala continued, her voice trembling. "Naya is brave, but she's still little. If they take us, we won't be together. They said rules are rules." She stepped closer, tears forming in her eyes, though she tried to hold them back. Please don't tell anyone you found us. Please let us stay. We can help on the ranch. We can clean, cook, anything. But don't call anyone who will take us away from each other." Hank didn't know what to say. He'd never faced something like this before. The girls stood close, trembling but determined, looking up at him with a kind of hope that scared him. Not because of them, because he wasn't sure he deserved their trust. "Tala," he said quietly, "I'm not trying to break you apart. I don't want that." She wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed by her tears. "Then please let us stay, even just for a little while. We don't want to be alone again." Hank took a slow breath. He knew he couldn't make decisions based on quick emotions, but he also couldn't ignore what he was seeing. He had lived enough years to understand when someone genuinely needed help. These girls weren't pretending or exaggerating. They were afraid, in a deep, real way. He crouched down so he was at eye level with them. "Listen to me carefully," he said softly. "I'm not going to force you to leave. You're safe here tonight. No one will take you anywhere without us talking first. All right?" Tala's breath caught, as if she wanted to believe him, but wasn't sure if she could. Naya and Suni watched him closely, their eyes big and hopeful. "I promise," Hank said, steady and sincere. "You're safe for now." Slowly, Tala nodded. The tension in her face softened, and she turned to her sisters, who both seemed relieved. "Thank you," she whispered. Hank stood and opened the porch door. "Come inside. Let me show you the room." The girls followed him into the warm house. They looked around with quiet amazement, as if they had stepped into a completely different world. The living room smelled of wood and old books. The walls were decorated with pictures of horses, fields, and a few faded family photos. Hank hadn't moved in years. He led them down a short hallway to a small guest room with a single bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out onto the back pasture. "You can share the bed," Hank said. "It's big enough for the three of you." "I'll bring extra blankets." Suni ran her hand over the soft quilt as if it were the nicest thing she had ever touched. Naya opened a drawer and smiled faintly at the neatly folded towels. Tala looked around the room, her eyes lingering on the lamp, the rug, the window. "It's really nice," she whispered. Hank cleared his throat. "I'll leave you to get settled. If you need anything, I'll be in the kitchen." When he stepped out and quietly closed the door behind him, he leaned against the wall, letting out a long, deep breath. He had expected a simple evening. Instead, he now had 3 young girls sleeping under his roof, girls who believed they needed a man to survive, girls who thought they would be separated if they were found. Hank knew things wouldn't stay simple after this. Not at all. But he also knew he couldn't turn his back on them. As he walked to the kitchen, he glanced down the hallway toward the guest room. Behind that door were 3 lives that had been full of uncertainty. And somehow, whether he liked it or not, they now depended on him. He didn't yet know what tomorrow would bring. But for tonight, he had done the right thing. And sometimes, he thought, that was all a person could do. Morning sunlight crept through the thin curtains of the guest room and landed softly across the girls' faces. Tala was the first to wake. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The quiet room, the soft bed, the smell of fresh coffee in the distance. None of it felt familiar. Then she remembered the night before. The long walk. The fear. The rancher who had surprised her by opening his door instead of turning them away. She slowly sat up, careful not to disturb Naya and Suni, who were still curled up under the blankets. They looked peaceful, more peaceful than they had been in weeks. Tala let them sleep a little longer. For once, they had a safe place to rest. After a few minutes, the house creaked softly, footsteps in the hallway. Tala listened closely. She didn't want any surprises. A moment later, a gentle knock came at the door. "Tala," Hank's quiet voice called. "You awake?" "Yes," she answered softly. You girls hungry? I can make some breakfast. Tala paused. She wasn't used to people offering help so freely, but she knew Naya and Suni would wake up hungry. Yes, she finally said. Thank you. Hank nodded once and walked away, giving them space. Tala turned to her sisters and brushed their arms lightly. Wake up, she whispered. Breakfast is ready. Naya blinked awake, rubbing her eyes. Real breakfast? She asked, almost surprised. Yes, Tala said with a small smile. Real breakfast. Suni stretched and yawned, her messy hair falling across her face. It smells good. Together the girls got up, smoothed the blankets, and followed the scent of warm food toward the kitchen. Hank was standing at the stove, flipping eggs and heating a pan of potatoes. He glanced over his shoulder when he heard them. Morning, he said. Good morning, the girls replied softly, almost in unison. You can sit wherever you like, he told them, nodding toward the small wooden table. The chairs looked old, but sturdy, and the table was covered with a simple checkered cloth. The girls sat closely together, their shoulders nearly touching. Hank placed plates of food in front of them, eggs, potatoes, and a few slices of toast. They looked at the plates with wide eyes. It wasn't fancy food, but it was warm and plenty. They stared for a moment, unsure if they should wait for Hank's permission. Go ahead, he said with a gentle smile. Eat. They did. Slowly at first, as if they wanted to savor the moment, then a little faster once they felt comfortable. Hank stood by the counter sipping coffee as he watched them. He wasn't judging them. He was simply trying to understand them better. You girls sleep all right? He asked. Yes, Naya said, her mouth full of toast. It was soft, Suni added quietly, as though discovering something new. Tala kept her eyes on her food, listening carefully to the conversation. She didn't want to say the wrong thing. She still didn't know how much she could trust this man, even if he had been kind so far. After breakfast, Hank showed them where to wash their dishes. He didn't want to spoil them or treat them like guests, but he didn't want them to feel like workers either. He simply believed that everyone should help where they could. And the girls seemed to appreciate having something to do. When the dishes were finished, Hank said, I have chores to do outside. If you girls want to get some fresh air, you can come along. If not, you can stay inside. Tala immediately stood up. We'll come. We can help. Hank raised an eyebrow. You sure? Ranch chores aren't easy. Tala nodded with confidence she didn't completely feel. We're used to working. Naya and Suni nodded too. Hank put on his old cowboy hat and led the way outside. The morning air was cool and refreshing. Horses grazed in the open field, and the wind carried the faint scent of hay and earth. The animals need feeding, Hank said. Usually I do it alone, so having an extra set of hands won't hurt. Tala watched carefully as Hank filled buckets with feed. She tried to copy his movements without getting in the way. Naya helped carry the lighter buckets, and Suni followed, keeping her eyes on everything, learning silently. The horses seemed curious about their new helpers. A tall brown mare walked right up to Suni, lowering her head to sniff her hand. Suni giggled softly, startled but happy. She likes you, Hank said, smiling a little. Suni smiled too, one of the first real smiles he had seen from her. As the morning went on, the girls grew more comfortable. They asked questions about the animals, the ranch, and the tools Hank used. Tala paid close attention to every answer, as though collecting knowledge for the future. Hank could tell she was used to being responsible. You're quick learners, Hank admitted. Most kids would have complained by now. We don't complain, Tala said quietly. We're thankful. Hank nodded, respecting the honesty in her voice. By midday, the sun was high and bright. Hank decided they had done enough for their first morning on the ranch. You girls earned a break, he said. Let's head inside. Back in the house, he poured them glasses of lemonade, and let them rest at the kitchen table. The girls talked quietly among themselves, their faces brighter than they had been the day before. Hank sat across from them, observing again. Now that the morning chores were done, it was time to talk, gently but honestly. "I'm glad you're settling in a little," he began. The girls nodded. "But we still need to figure out a long-term plan. I promised you were safe here last night, and I meant that. But I can't just make decisions without knowing more." Tala's smile faded instantly. "We don't want to leave," she said. Hank raised a hand softly. "I'm not sending you away today. I just need to understand what you want and what you think is best." Tala swallowed, the fear returning to her eyes. "We want to stay here." Suni and Naya leaned toward her, nodding quickly. "We won't cause trouble," Tala continued. "We won't ask for anything. We can help with chores every day. We'll be quiet. We just want to stay together." Hank looked at her carefully. "Tala, I know you're trying to protect your sisters, and I admire that. But staying here isn't something we can decide overnight." Tala's eyes lowered. "I'm not saying no," Hank added gently. "I'm saying let's take it one step at a time." Naya shifted in her seat. "What if someone comes looking for us?" she asked in a small voice. Hank paused. "If someone comes, we'll talk. Together. No one is going to take you away without us understanding everything." Tala studied his face, looking for any sign he might break his promise. She found none. "You really mean that?" she asked. "Yes," Hank said. "I mean it." The tension in the room eased slowly. The girls relaxed slightly, though Tala remained cautious. After a quiet moment, Hank stood up. "Tell you what, let's make a deal. For now, you stay here. You help out a bit. You rest. You eat. And we take things day by day. No big decisions yet." The girls exchanged hopeful glances. "And," Hank added with a light smile, "you don't have to say you can't live without a man. That's not true. You girls are strong all on your own. You just need a place to land for a while." Tala blinked, surprised by his words. No one had ever told her that before. She wasn't sure how to respond, but something warm settled in her chest. For the rest of the day, the ranch felt different. Not in a loud or obvious way, but in a quiet, gentle way. The girls' soft laughter mixed with the sounds of horses and wind. Hank found himself listening to it more than he expected. He had lived alone for years, thinking that was the best way to keep life simple. But now, walking through his home and hearing 3 young voices talking in the next room, he began to realize that simplicity wasn't the same as fullness, and somehow the ranch felt fuller than it had in a long time. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, he didn't mind that uncertainty. Not one bit. Days slowly turned into weeks, and the ranch began to change in ways Hank never expected. It didn't happen all at once, more like small, gentle steps. The girls were shy at first, careful with their words and movements, but little by little, they began to open up. And with each passing day, the ranch felt less like an empty place and more like a home filled with soft voices, warm laughter, and new routines. Every morning, Tala woke up before her sisters. She liked having a few quiet minutes to prepare for the day. She would fold the blankets neatly, brush her hair, and step out into the cool morning air to greet Hank, who was usually already outside tending to the animals. Hank noticed this early habit. "You're up early again," he often said. Tala always answered politely, "I like mornings." She said it simply, but Hank knew there was more behind it. Early mornings gave her a sense of control, a chance to prepare herself before the day began. He admired that about her, even if she didn't realize it herself. Naya and Suni followed soon after, rubbing their sleepy eyes and stumbling into the kitchen, where Hank often left fruit or warm oatmeal for them. When they sat down at the table, their smiles were soft but genuine. "You girls sleep well?" Hank asked every morning. "Yes," they always replied, and each day their answer sounded a little warmer, a little more relaxed. The girls learned quickly. They helped with feeding the horses, gathering eggs, sweeping the porch, and washing dishes. But Hank never treated them like workers. He always made sure they had time to play, explore, and simply be children, something they hadn't had in a long time. One afternoon, Hank found Suni sitting by the fence, watching a group of butterflies flutter over a patch of wildflowers. She was humming a soft tune. "What are you thinking about?" Hank asked gently. Suni looked up with a shy smile. "Nothing. The butterflies are pretty." "Yeah," Hank said, sitting beside her. "They sure are." Moments like that were small, yet they carried a peacefulness that touched Hank more than he liked to admit. Naya, on the other hand, was full of energy. She ran across the fields, laughed loudly when the wind blew her hair into her face, and tried to be brave even when she was scared. She liked climbing the wooden gate and pretending she was looking out at a faraway world. "You're going to fall if you go too high," Hank warned her one day. "I won't fall," Naya insisted confidently. "I'm strong." Hank smiled. "I believe you." And he did. Tala, however, was more serious. She watched over her sisters with a protective eye. She helped them with chores, guided them gently, and made sure they stayed out of trouble. She had been forced into the role of the older sibling long before she was ready. But Hank tried to show her that she didn't always have to be the adult. One afternoon, while the younger girls played with the goats near the barn, Hank approached Tala. "You don't always have to watch them every second," he told her kindly. "This ranch is safe. You can relax a little." Tala lowered her gaze. "I don't know how," she admitted softly. Hank nodded. "You'll learn. It takes time." Tala didn't answer, but she thought about his words long after he walked away. As the weeks passed, the girls grew more confident. Hank began teaching them skills he thought would be useful, not because he expected them to work like adults, but because he wanted them to feel capable. He taught Tala how to saddle a horse correctly. At first, she struggled with the straps and buckles, but she didn't give up. Eventually, she learned to do it smoothly. "You've got good hands," Hank told her. "Careful and steady." Tala looked proud, though she tried to hide it. He taught Naya how to guide the chickens into the coop at dusk. She chased them gently, laughing when they moved in funny little hops. "You're a natural," Hank said. Naya puffed her chest a little. "I told you I'm strong." Suni learned how to water the garden without drowning the plants. She liked feeling the soil and watching the tiny sprouts rise from the earth. Hank encouraged all three of them. He believed encouragement was something they hadn't received much before, and he wanted them to know they were capable of more than they thought. The girls weren't the only ones changing, though. Hank changed too. He found himself looking forward to their laughter, to their questions, to the way they filled the quiet spaces of the ranch. He started making bigger breakfasts, preparing softer blankets, and fixing up things around the house that he had ignored for years. He even repaired an old swing behind the barn so the girls could play on it. One evening, as Hank fixed a loose board on the porch, Tala sat beside him. She watched his hands move skillfully. "Did you always live here?" she asked. "Pretty much," Hank replied. "I grew up in this area. This ranch belonged to my parents, and after they passed it down to me, I stayed." "Did you ever want to leave?" Tala asked, curious. "Maybe once or twice," Hank said with a chuckle. "But life has a way of keeping you grounded. And I guess I always felt responsible for this place." Tala nodded slowly. "I understand responsibility." Hank glanced at her. "Yeah, I know you do." There was a quiet moment between them, peaceful, warm. Tala hesitated before speaking again. Do you ever get lonely here? Hank paused his hammering. It wasn't a question he expected. Sometimes, he admitted honestly. It gets quiet, too quiet. But not since you three arrived. Tala looked at him with surprise. Really? Really, Hank said simply. She smiled, just a little. A soft, shy smile that made her look like the young girl she was, not the burdened older sister she was forced to become. As the days grew warmer and brighter, the girls learned more about the ranch and themselves. Suni learned she liked brushing the horses. Naya discovered she enjoyed helping Hank fix simple tools. Tala realized she was capable of many more things than she thought, things that had nothing to do with fear or survival. One warm afternoon, Hank decided it was time to teach Tala how to ride a horse. She looked nervous, but determined. You don't have to do anything today, Hank said gently. Just sit in the saddle, that's all. Tala took a deep breath. Okay. Suni and Naya cheered from the fence, waving excitedly as Tala climbed onto the gentle mare. You're doing great, Hank said, walking beside the horse. See? Nothing to be scared of. Tala held the reins carefully, her back straight, her eyes focused ahead. When the horse took a slow step, she gasped, but she didn't panic. You're in control, Hank assured her. You're safe. Tala relaxed slightly, and for the first time she felt brave in a way that wasn't about protecting her sisters, but about believing in herself. The ranch became a place of small triumphs like that. But the biggest change happened not in the chores or the lessons, but in their hearts. The girls began to understand something important. Their worth did not depend on having a man to protect them. They were safe because they were in a good environment, with someone who cared, not because he was a man, but because he was kind. And Hank began to understand something too. He needed them just as much as they needed him. One evening, as the sky turned orange and pink, the girls sat on the porch swing, swaying gently. Hank watched them from the steps, a soft smile on his face. You girls did good today, he said. I'm proud of you. Naya beamed. Suni leaned against her sister. Tala looked down, hiding a smile she couldn't fully contain. Life on the ranch wasn't perfect, but it was healing. Quietly, slowly, gently healing. And all of them, Hank, Tala, Naya, and Suni, were becoming a family without even realizing it. And though none of them said it out loud, they all felt the same thing deep inside. This place was starting to feel like home. The days continued passing quietly on the ranch, each one weaving itself into the next with a calm rhythm. By now, the girls had settled almost completely. They knew the sounds of the ranch, the patterns of the animals, and the way the sunlight moved across the fields. What once felt unfamiliar now felt warm and comforting. But even though everything seemed peaceful, Hank could sense that something was happening inside the girls, especially Tala. She was thinking a lot more, watching him closely at times, as if she wanted to ask something but wasn't sure how. He didn't push her. He had learned that the girls spoke when they felt safe, not when they were asked too many questions. One morning, Tala approached him while he was repairing a fence post. Hank, she said quietly. He put down his tools and looked at her. What's on your mind? Tala hesitated. Do you think people always need someone to look after them? Hank studied her expression. She didn't look sad, just thoughtful. Well, he said slowly, I think everybody needs support sometimes. Not because they can't live without someone, but because life is easier when people care about each other. Tala nodded, but she didn't walk away. Why do you ask? Hank asked gently. Tala brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. I used to think we needed someone strong around us, to keep us safe. But now I think maybe we only needed a peaceful place and someone kind." Hank smiled softly. "You figured that out on your own. That's something to be proud of." Tala looked down, but he saw her smile a little. "It doesn't mean you can't accept help," Hank added. "Everyone needs help, even me." Tala looked surprised. "You do?" "Of course," he laughed. "You girls helped me more than you know. This ranch was too quiet before you came. Now it feels alive." That made Tala's eyes warm. She didn't say anything, but she didn't need to. Hank understood. As time passed, the bond between them grew stronger. The girls started feeling comfortable enough to share bits of their thoughts, dreams, and hopes, things they had kept locked away for a long time. Suni confessed that she wanted to draw pictures of animals someday. Naya said she wished she could run as fast as the wind, exploring every corner of the world. Tala, after much hesitation, said she didn't know what she wanted yet, but she hoped she would figure it out someday. "You will," Hank assured her, "and you'll have all the time you need." One warm afternoon, Hank surprised the girls by bringing out 3 small wooden boxes. "What's this?" Naya asked, her eyes wide. "A gift," Hank said, "for each of you." The girls opened the boxes slowly. Inside, each was a small keepsake Hank had carved himself. A horse for Tala, a bird for Naya, and a butterfly for Suni. Simple, but carved with care. Suni clapped her hands in delight. Naya hugged hers tightly. Tala ran her fingers over the horse carving, her voice soft. "Thank you." "But why?" "Because," Hank said, "you're part of this place now, and I wanted you to have something of your own." Tala held the carving against her chest for a moment. She didn't speak, but her silence was full of feeling. A few days later, something unexpected happened. A small storm rolled in late in the afternoon. It wasn't dangerous, just a lot of wind and heavy rain. But storms made the girls nervous. Hank could see the tension in their shoulders as the thunder rumbled in the distance. He lit a small lamp in the living room and called them over. "Come on, sit with me. Storms can't bother us in here." Naya curled up beside him. Suni leaned against her sister. Tala sat close enough to feel safe, but still kept her usual calm posture. The thunder grew louder, and Suni covered her ears. "It will pass," Hank said softly. "Storms always do." To distract them, he told them a story about when he was a boy and accidentally let a goat into his mother's kitchen. The girls burst into laughter. Imagining a goat knocking over pots and plates, the laughter helped more than the lamp or the closed windows. Tala relaxed. Suni uncovered her ears. Naya even asked him to tell another story. By the time the storm ended, the girls were half asleep, leaning against Hank and each other. He carried them to their beds one by one. As he tucked them in, he noticed something in their faces: peace, trust, and the kind of comfort only a safe home can give. The next morning, after the storm washed everything clean, the air was crisp and fresh. The girls ran outside to see how the ranch looked. "Look!" Naya shouted. "Everything is shiny!" Suni spun in circles, delighted. Tala stood quietly beside Hank, watching her sisters with a soft smile. "They're happy," she said. "They deserve to be," Hank replied. Tala looked up at him. "So do you." Hank blinked, surprised by her unexpected sincerity. She walked a little closer. "Thank you for giving us a place, and thank you for being patient. We know we were scared when we came here." "You were brave," Hank said. "Braver than you know." Tala shook her head gently. "We only stayed because we felt like we finally belonged somewhere." Her words hung in the air, warm and sincere. Hank nodded. "You do belong, you all do, for as long as you want." Tala didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "We want to stay." That simple sentence carried so much meaning: trust, hope, and a new beginning. From that day on, the ranch life became even more steady and secure. The girls knew they weren't temporary guests. They were part of something bigger. They were part of a family. The days flowed with a kind of gentle harmony. Suni drew pictures of butterflies and stuck them on the wall. Naya started racing the wind across the fields and timed herself for fun. Tala slowly learned to enjoy moments without worrying, without feeling like she had to guard everything. Hank watched them grow, little by little, into children with dreams again, not children who felt lost. One evening, they all sat together on the porch. The sky was painted with soft colors, peach, gold, and lavender. A warm breeze carried the smell of fresh grass. Naya leaned on Hank's arm. "This is my favorite place," she said. "Mine too," Suni added. Tala looked at Hank. Do you think we can stay here forever?" Hank didn't hesitate. "As long as you want. This is your home now." The girls smiled. Big, bright, hopeful smiles. The ranch no longer felt like a lonely place. It felt complete. A place where laughter replaced silence. A place where three girls found peace. A place where a quiet rancher discovered that love doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes softly, in small footsteps, shy smiles, and gentle trust. And as the stars began to shine above them, the four of them sat close together, knowing deep in their hearts that they had built something precious, something that would last. Not out of need, not out of fear, but out of kindness, care, and the simple truth that family is made by the people who stay, who support, and who love quietly every day. And in that peaceful moment, they all realized they had found the same thing: a home, a safe, warm, lasting home.